Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Welcome to another broadcast of a very important story. Actually, two stories. First and foremost, you know what you got to do. Hit the one to let me know you can hear me. Put a one in the chat if you can hear me. Let's see here. Let's make sure we here. We are here. We are here. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Good. Good. How's my sound, ladies and gentlemen? Do I need to connect the high pitched microphone? Okay, good. You guys can hear me. You guys can hear me. So I was on two lives today. I was on two other lives. It wasn't my live, it was someone else's live. So I joined two lives, and I'm going to talk about the lives that I was on today. In particular, I was on I was on Cat Not Williams live, and I thought that was pretty cool because I had never been on her platform. So I thought that was pretty cool. Very respectful. I thought she was an attorney, but she like many other legal bloggers, she follows these cases, and she's versed in what is happening in these cases. Today, there was several motion responses filed in the case involving YSL defendants, Young Thug, and others. But I want to hone in on one particular motion I read, and this was filed a couple of days ago. But it was a bond motion, and this can be applicable to, in my opinion, most of the defendants that are actually active in this particular case, um, but primarily the six defendants that are on trial in Judge Whitaker's courtroom. So, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, uh, there's also been a development in the Sonya Massey or Massey shooting. There was an autopsy report released today, and the family, as along with the family attorney Benjamin Crump, discussed that. We want to bring some of that press conference details to the live. I don't know which one should I go first. Should we go with the YSL or should we go with the Sonya Massey? One YSL, two Sonya Massey. I'm gonna let you guys kind of be co-producers of the show today. What do you guys think? Sonya Massey, two, YSL, one. Both, mind you, cases are very important. So let's get into Sonya Massey. Let's go. Let's get into that. Uh, I want to bring up the family of the family representative of Sonya Massey, and led by Benjamin Crump. And I've met Benjamin Crump several times over various cases I've covered. But he is definitely the the uh, the black attorney general uh, in our community. So with that, I want to bring up Mr. Benjamin Crump and family, and then we're going to talk about this autopsy. Make sure you guys are locked in. Make sure you're locked in. We're going to roll the tape.
Yeah, I got it. No, let's keep moving with it because we got it. Okay.
Good morning. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Teresa Haley with Haley and Associates Envisions 1908. Today is a sad day. You've been here before. We're here to talk about the results of the autopsy. I am so grateful to have Attorney Ben Crump with us. But as I watch the video again, I have to reiterate, Black women are under attack. We fear for our lives as well. Again, we used to tell our sons, our husbands, our nephews, the men in our lives to be careful and what to do when you're stopped by the police. Now we have to tell ourselves, our daughters, our mothers, our sisters, our cousins. As I watched the video, I thought, this is not murder, this is an assassination. judge for yourself. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our very esteemed Attorney Benjamin Crump.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Teresa Haley, for helping this family and helping the community in these very difficult times. I'm Attorney Ben Crump, along with Attorney Natalie Jackson, Attorney Paul Greenkey, and Attorney Jennifer Hightower. We have the honor of representing the family of Sonya Massey. Present with us today is her son Malachi Massey, her uncle Raymond Massey, as well as his daughter Shadia Massey. Also with me and Ms. Haley is Cliff Jones, who's going to assist me today as we talk about the results of the autopsy. Before we do that, I want to also talk about an update as we continue to probe and find out all the reasons why this tragedy happened leading up before the killing and the aftermath of the killing. We talked about how the family wanted a thorough investigation as to why they didn't know until 24 hours later that the person who had shot Sonya Massey was a law enforcement official. Why weren't they told that from the very beginning when they showed up asking who did this? Malachi talked about how he was on the phone with the hospital officials, and he kept asking, they kept saying somebody shot her in her face, and told him in graphic detail at 5 o'clock in the morning what happened to his mother, but never told him who. Shadia and Jimmy went to the house at 6 a.m. that morning when law enforcement was all around. They kept asking the questions, who did this? What happened? Nobody told them that it was the sheriff's deputy, Sean Grayson, who had shot her in the face. They seemed to be led to believe that it was some prowler or something, because they started asking questions. Every time they would ask questions, they would be given questions. What was the history between her and the neighbor? And so it was troubling. So we wanted investigation. And I say we, the family, passionately wanted an investigation into that there, because they are suspicious of everybody and everything. Wouldn't you be if this happened to your daughter, your mother? And then we talked with the Department of Justice because we want to know more about the history of this sheriff's deputy who so flagrantly and senselessly shot and killed Sonya Massey with no remorse, no humanity after he did it, evidenced by the video. People contacted our office since we've had the press conferences, Teresa, and this is why we continue to try to fight not only in the court of law, but in the court of public opinion, because we know we have to fight to get justice. We don't assume that it's just going to happen for Black people in America, even when we got all the evidence in the world, all the visual evidence in the world, we still don't take it for granted. We know the lessons of Laquan McDonald and how the officer got a slap on the wrist, even though that evidence was on video, ocular proof of the crime. And we have been made aware that there were some unsubstantiated allegations of excessive force by this officer allegedly on 2 occasions. One dealing with an African American who received injuries from allegedly a tasing, but regrettably, before the findings were concluded, the individual wouldn't cooperate because apparently he was dealing with the criminal charges. And so he apparently didn't trust the system to do right by him. So we know that that individual is now considering coming forward. Even though you have to understand, a lot of people, a lot of minorities in America don't come forward for many reasons. They don't call the police for many reasons because things normally don't turn out good for us when we call the police. Obviously, Sonya Massey is exhibit 1, but we're hoping and encouraging him to come forward and tell what happened with his interaction with Deputy Sean Grayson. And then the other individual we know is out there. We don't know what this situation is, but apparently they also complained about excessive, unnecessary force inflicted by the deputy. And the question really goes back to what Sonya's father, Mr. Weirburn, said. With the 2 DUIs, with the reprimand from the Army over serious misconduct, with the 6 different law enforcement agencies in 4 years, with whatever answers he answered in the questionnaires when he was interviewing for the job. When you asked about why did you leave this department? Why did you resign from this? Were there red flags missed? And should he have been hired in the first place by the sheriff's department? Those questions only get louder. You know, Malachi and Cliff Jones and us, we asked that question, you know, DUI guilty convictions? How do you even have a driver's license? Much less getting a job as a sheriff's deputy. Many questions to be answered. And so we will be sending the formal letter to the Department of Justice with those things that we have been made aware of, and they have promised the family that they will work with the local agencies and they will try to get answers to all of these allegations of other instances of excessive force. And before you hear from Uncle Raymond Massey and Shadia Massey, and finally from Malachi Massey, we want to take a few minutes to go over the autopsy report because I think it's important. And Teresa, I'll tell you when to turn it over. And you all, I want to thank State Attorney John Mearheiser for making sure he got the autopsy to the family for transparency and that he's providing it to you all. Even though the family takes great exception with the sheriff's department, they have been very grateful that Mr. Mearheiser's office has tried to be very transparent and very respectful to them as victims. And so he made sure that this autopsy report was released, and it should give you a lot of the things, answer a lot of the questions that you all asked previously. The biggest thing on the autopsy are the findings, and we will go through those. The conclusion is based on the information available to me and on the autopsy findings. It is my opinion that Sonya Massey, a 36-year-old Black woman, died as a result of a gunshot wound to the head. And then it goes on to in more detail. And it says the gunshot wound of the head, the entrance was beneath the left eye. The injury, proliferation of the left internal I'm looking at this word because I know it's not subdural artery, but it's a artery that is the blood vessel right beneath her eye. The exit, posterior left surface of the upper neck. Associated injuries, skull fracture, subdural hemorrhages. Direction, front to back, downward and slightly right to left. Range, no soot or gunpowder stippling on the skin. If you could turn it over. And I would tell you, they had an anatomical model that is very important. Here, obviously, you have Sonya Massey with her beautiful smile. But you have, as they said, the injury right beneath the left eye. And then they talk about how the exit is posterior left surface of the upper neck, below the ear, below her hairline. Now, why this is so significant is it confirms that Deputy Sean Grayson shot in a downward trajectory. He shot in a downward trajectory. This autopsy findings, coupled with the video where we see her ducking, saying, "Sorry, sir, sorry." He shot when she's making a motion coming up. That's how you get the downward trajectory. And you see on the video his arms. He aims down. He literally aims down. You see his arms braced in a downward trajectory. And we know that he walked 2 to 3 steps to his right, out away from the counter, where it was, we believe, from objective observation, to get a better shot at Sonya Massey. And when Sonya Massey was staring at the barrel of his gun, we see on the video what she did. She stooped down and said, "Sorry, sorry." And we believe that the bullet, the shot, was shot while she was in a stooping position coming up. And that's how you get the downward trajectory. And the autopsy confirms what everybody already knew on the video, that this was just a senseless, unnecessary, excessive use of force. Completely unnecessary. Certainly not justified. I mean, how can you justify this? She's all of 5'1", 110 pounds. He's approximately 6'5" tall, approximately 260 pounds. Completely excessive. Completely excessive. And so we will continue to provide you updates, evidence as we get it, because we're not taking for granted that America want to see Sonya Massey like Deputy Sean Grayson saw her. We want to make sure that America sees her as a human being worthy of dignity and respect and consideration. We don't take it for granted. Your actions speak so loud, we need not hear your words. And until we get a conviction and a sentence, we will continue to keep our foot on the gas and full steam ahead and fighting for justice for Sonya Massey. Full steam ahead. We understand far too often, especially as it relates to Black women in America, there's not equal justice. There's not equal justice. And just like Sonya Massey said, and I continue to use her words, until this discriminatory criminal justice system gives full justice for the death of Sonya Massey, we rebuke you in the name of Jesus. Justice for Sonya Massey. Justice for Sonya Massey. Justice for Sonya Massey.
Justice for Sonya Massey. Yes.
At this time, you will hear from Uncle Raymond Massey, Mr. Wilburn, her father, and Miss Donna, her mother, couldn't be with us today. And I really appreciate Malachi being here. This is very emotional, even seeing these pictures, even though he hasn't been able to watch the video, because that's his mama. You can't, who wants to see their mother get killed like an animal? But even this was emotional for him, but he understood why we have to do it so we can get justice for his mother. So we're gonna hear from Raymond Massey, and he's gonna talk to you about the families continuing to struggle in these difficult times as they fight for justice. And then we'll have his daughter talk to you. Mr. Raymond.
Thank you. I wanted to tell you that I loved Sonya very much. She was a beautiful Black queen. She is the only family member that me and my wife was talking last night about. I've never once seen her angry or mad. She was always full of love, and she loved her kids and God. I call my sister Donna, Malachi, Summer, and their parents daily. And it hurts me so bad that the last time I spoke with Malachi, he had told me he finally got a little rest, and that was just the day before yesterday. And I can tell you that his sister is having nightmares to the point where we have to check the room. That just makes me so angry to see my family hurt as they do. It was so hard. It's hard for me to see my daughter and my nephew had to go in the house and clean up blood. And that just hurts me to see my family hurt. And after what Attorney Crump had talked about the autopsy, that is exactly why he needs to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Massey. Thank you very much, Mr. Massey. Now you will hear from Shadia Massey, who is her first cousin, Raymond's daughter. And even though she has 3 other sisters, She was raised with Shadia, and they were like sisters. And Shadia was the first family member to arrive at the scene. And I mean, obviously the emotion of seeing your sister blood everywhere and how she tried to clean the blood up. So Malachi and Summer, her children, wouldn't have to see their mother's blood when they came in the house to get their clothes. So Shadia Massey will try to speak to you from the heart.
Hello. Sonya meant the world to me. I loved her so much. This tragedy has been too much on my family. Her kids, her daughter cannot sleep at night, y'all. She's in one household, I'm in another household. For her to go to the bathroom, she has to be on FaceTime with me. For her to get a drink of water, she has to call us before she get out her bed. You know, this is the hardest thing that we have ever been through as a Massey. It just breaks my heart that our family has to go through this.
No, you're fine. Justice for Sonya Massey. And finally, you'll hear from Malachi, who was the first one notified that his mother had been killed. And just as he explained to us what they told him, you see, was the findings at autopsy. So Malachi, if you would share what's on your heart.
Okay. Well, you know that they told me that my mom, you know, she got shot in her eye and it came out her neck or whatever. And I don't know, like I haven't been able to sleep for real. The only time I really feel comfortable sleeping is when I'm like just on the floor. I can't even sleep in my bed. Like, I don't know, like this is just, I really don't have words. Like I've been said, I don't have words for real for this. But the first night I don't go to my mother's house, this happens. How? Why? And I wonder if I was there, if he would have did anything to me. I don't know. For real. That's all I can say. She lives with her father. I live with my father.
And I will say this, up until just a few weeks, Malachi and Summer were staying with their mother. She was having mental illnesses and they made the decision it was best that they stay with their father while she seeks help. And, but both of them were going every day to check on their mother, be with their mother. And the first time I talked to Malachi, he was so distraught because he said, because I was working, this is the first day I didn't get to her and this happens. And then the only other thing, Malachi, you may want to tell them is you think law enforcement came there earlier that day.
Okay, it was an incident that happened earlier that day. And I talked to two officers or whatever, and I believe that it's the same officer that shot my mother. I talked to his partner first. Then the second officer, that's the one that I think the one that did that. I talked to them and they told me that because she was driving herself to the hospital or something. She wasn't even at the house when this was going on, but she was driving herself to the hospital. They told me that they were going to go there to help her. And then this happens.
Yeah. So she was seeking help because she was trying to get help. And it's like Mr. Wilburn said, she was trying to get help. She needed a helping hand, not a bullet to the face.
That's right.
She just needed those officers to extend an ounce of humanity, not to kill her. And like we said, mental illness is real, you all may have family members who are struggling with their mental health. They deserve compassion and consideration, not excessive, unjustified force like we saw in that video. So we continue to try to say that Sonya Massey, life matters. She did, man, when you hear Malachi talk about what kind of mother she was, how she worked overtime to help him get a car and everything so he can get a job, how she talked to him about balancing budgets and about the Bible and about trying to work and be responsible. I mean, she was doing her best to be a person who helped people in the world, especially her children. She did not deserve this. She did not deserve this. So, Malachi, if you got anything else you want to say? Okay. Thank you so much, Malachi. We will try to take some of your questions if you have any.
So, I'm sorry, the Malachi was describing earlier on July 5th that there was a response that the same officers.
That he said he believes it was the same officers. That's why he believes they knew she had was struggling with her mental health.
And she had driven herself to the hospital for treatment.
She had sought consultation, yes.
She had not been in an inpatient program, but she was under a doctor's care.
Yeah, well, Mr. Wilborn said it, remember at the other press how she was trying to get consultation because she was struggling with her mental health.
So,
Yes, sir.
Malachi believes that the officers went to his mom's house earlier
That day.
the day before, July 5th, right?
Yes, July 5th.
July 5th, and do we know why they went to the house?
No, some incident happened. She was on her way to the hospital when she was talking to Malachi, but you talked to the officers too.
Yeah, I talked to them and I was letting them know what was going on. I really don't know what happened before I got there, but I just know that I talked to them and let them know what's wrong with my mother.
So you talked to one of the officers by phone and I'm just.
No, in person, face to face. Yes, they was at my house.
You were at the house at
Yeah.
the same time visiting your mom?
And she drove herself to the hospital because I don't know why she did, but she drove herself to the hospital. When I got there, it was just the police there. My mother called me before all of this happened and she told me the police was there. And when I got to her house, she wasn't there. She was calling me, telling me that she's driving herself to the hospital and they were outside of the house.
So you don't know who called 911 or called it.
So she drove herself to the hospital after the encounter with the police,
Mhm.
right, that day?
Mhm.
And you told them about her struggle with mental health.
Yeah, and I just tried to, like, the whole week, like, before all of this happened, I've been trying to get her in a mental health. We actually did get her in a mental health place in St. Louis, but they let her come back. I don't know why, though. Why would they let her come back so soon? I don't know.
Thank you, Malachi.
Praying for you.
Thanks. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
You had referenced two separate people that had use of force complaints that were never officially filed. Were those?
I think they were filed, they had no determination, is what
Okay.
we've been told.
But they were filed. And just, I guess my question, were both of those for Sangamon County specifically, or were those at previous law enforcement jobs?
We think it was a previous law enforcement job. One of them was an African-American citizen. We don't know the other one, but we know that the allegations is that they reported them. They have contacted our office. One of them did tell us he was a black man and told us it's the same guy and that he, they end up charging him and stuff. He thinks they did that intentionally. And so apparently it's in his record that there were allegations made, but unsubstantiated. So we continue to try to get to the crux of that. The other individual called the office said that, they made a allegation, but nothing happened. And they didn't want to go further. They just prayed for the family and said, we had a run-in with him too.
So these were proactive calls from the people to you, not official, okay.
Yeah. Proactive calls.
What has DOJ told you? You told us the other day that they opened an investigation. They say we're monitoring, assessing, and following the criminal case.
Right. And subsequent to that, we have been told to try to send a formal inquiry about these other allegations so they can look at who those citizens were and if there was a common connection of the excessive force and on who did he inflict excessive force allegedly on.
Okay, so you're familiar with this process.
Yeah.
They haven't said an investigation here, but they are assessing what you're.
Right. So that apparently they've opened a file and they have come short of calling it an investigation. And they told us they would notify us that they're trying to get information just like we're trying to get information, and that they're working with the local officials to get information.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So here's the problem here. This officer, if you guys recall the video, this officer might have been to the house early on. So when he was given his 10 codes, calling them into the dispatcher, it appears based on what those codes were that he knew that she was having a mental health crisis. And I'm not making any excuses for this cop, but when she said, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus," he was like, "Oh, no, you won't. I'll shoot you in the face." Where is that a normal response for a police officer dealing with someone who's going through a mental health crisis? So this is a problem that we have in police departments across the nation. These officers are not trained on how to deal with people suffering mental health crisis. You can tell just based on the commands that this officer and the other officer and the request they were making to her. Give me your ID. She was saying, "I have paperwork." And then one officer is saying, "Let me see the paperwork." And the other officer is saying, "Give me the ID first. Let's do it step by." So he was giving commands to giving instruction to the Miss Massey, but his partner was also kind of, if you follow me, kind of giving her a command as well. And I think at this point, it went from a witness who may have heard some things or she was hearing some things to her now being the subject of their investigation. They entered the home. How do you enter someone's home and then you draw your gun on them and they called you for help? Just think about that. When you call 911, you invite them into your home. She invited them. I don't know if she invited them inside the home because that's not clear on the camera, but we know that the last response she made while the cop was standing at the doorway was that she's okay. She's okay. But this cop persisted in asking her questions, and the other cop went around to get the tag number and called it in. We don't know what the results of that tag number was, but I can only assume that based on the 911 dispatcher not coming back with a hit, that the car was either stolen or there's some type of issue with it. I can only conclude that there was no issue with the car. Now, as Attorney Crump said in the review of the autopsy, The officer made steps towards her. He made steps towards her. Her arms didn't even raise to a level of the counter. Nevertheless, it didn't reach his face level with the pot of water. And the aggression started when she said the words. It wasn't her motion, it wasn't her gesture towards him, it was the words. And we still never seen him pick up the Bible that she asked for. I never seen him grab the Bible. And listen, there's something deeper going on here, and she might have known that these officers weren't there as protectors. They weren't there at her house as protectors, and she probably felt this. And it I don't know what you believe in, but sometimes people pick up on energy, and she picked up on that cop's energy immediately, and he proved her right because he started cussing at her in her own home. You cussing at the woman. You cussing at this black woman in her home, and she called you for help. Where is that okay in the police training? Where's that okay? I'll shoot you in your face. He said, I'll shoot you in your face. That's what he said. So at that point, he wasn't a friend. He was a foe. He wasn't someone to give her aid. And then he may have even had the knowledge that she had a mental issue going on with her. According to the son, that he believes that this officer responded to a call early on, but the logs will show that. During an earlier live where I was on with Kat Not Williams, one of the panelists said that, and I'm going to investigate this, but that cameras have already been denied to cover the initial proceeding in this case. I'm going to look into that, because if that is the case, then we have to make an issue about that to get cameras in the courtroom. We know that cameras are allowed in Springfield, Illinois, because there's a famous judge. When I say famous, is a judge who went viral that is in that same courthouse in Springfield, Illinois, who, if you guys recall, there was a guy driving. He shouldn't have been driving. He appeared on Zoom, but his license was suspended. It was a black judge. Now, we're going to find out, Tawanda, why there's no cameras going to be allowed in the courtroom, because that's going to be an issue. That's going to be a very big issue, because this is a high-profile case at this point, and there are cameras allowed in the courtroom typically, and we need to know, as members of the press, why would any judge think not having cameras in the courtroom is a violation of the First Amendment for press to have access to this highly publicized, highly important case that is happening in America right now. So we'll look into that. It was very troubling to watch the brother, the cousin, and the son speak at this press conference. And I don't think that it has sank in with the son as to what happened to his mother, because he's probably in shock right now, still in shock. He's probably still in shock, especially in the manner in which his mother died. She was shot in the eye and the bullet went through her head. Awful. Just awful. Just awful. Very tragic. So when we hear the call to protect Black women, it speaks volumes. It speaks volumes. He saw her as not even a human being. Not even a human being. And it's probably something deeper, sinister about this cop, in my opinion. But to have that type of mentality come into someone's home doesn't seem like he should have ever been in the police department. And I would argue that the person, his backup partner, shouldn't either. They pulled their guns out. They pulled their guns out on a woman who was cowering under a couch to protect herself from the gun. Once you pull your gun out, you have intent on using it. You never draw your gun unless you plan on using it. And this notion that the water was by his feet, he walked feet away from a safe area into the line of him being able to fire the shots at her because of water. Just think about that. And it really sunk in when the son said he could have been at the house as well. How do you think they would have treated the young black male that was at the home with his mother? I watched both videos of the body cam. The second one I watched was the one where the officer was actually applying pressure. And I watched the one where the officer went, after he left the house, he went to his back of his car, and you could see his hands shaking. He had the blood of Sonya Massey on his hands, and he was shaking. He knew at that point they screwed up. He knew his partner screwed up, and his hand was shaking. And when someone called out that wasn't in the camera view and asked him, was he okay? He said yes, but he clearly wasn't okay. He clearly wasn't okay. But let's see if he does the right thing. Let's see if he testifies as to what really happened and not provide cover for this rogue cop. I don't even like saying give them the title officers anymore. Once you do something like that, you don't get the status of being officers. I know an officer, and she's behind me. That's an officer. That's my daughter. I know an officer who does the right thing. I don't know what this was. I don't know what this was. To group him with honest officers that actually do the right thing, because there are officers that do the right thing. He wasn't one of them. And they need to weed out all those cops that have the mindset that he has. We don't know what the culture is in that that sheriff department. But it's a problem. It's a major problem. So, ladies and gentlemen, I kind of want to shift this, but I know the title references YSL as well. But I think what I want to do, I want to leave this video intact with just Sonya Massey, and we'll do another live to talk about the motion. I don't want to touch this. I just want to leave this here. I don't want to take away from the reporting of this particular story. And as difficult it is to cover stories like this, it's necessary. It's necessary. It's necessary. And I think about when I was sitting in the Sanford, Florida courtroom, watching witness after witness after witness testify about Trayvon Martin, about George Zimmerman, about his behavior as a neighborhood watch person. And I think about watching Trayvon's mother and father sitting in the courtroom. And you never want to be the family of someone that has lost a loved one like this. You don't want to be in that position. And when you see it so often, over many years on Mike Brown, when Mike Brown was killed in Ferguson from walking across the street in his neighborhood, He was walking across the street in his neighborhood. Don't let people villainize Mike Brown. He was walking across the street in his neighborhood. And Darren Wilson, the cop who shot Mike Brown, had words for Mike Brown before he killed him. George Zimmerman had words for Trayvon Martin when he killed him. The cops who shot Alton Sterling had words for them. None of the words that they had for them were nice or professional. That's the one thing you could take away from that. You saw Eric Garner being choked out by a Staten Island cop for selling cigarettes, Lucy's. So when you see stuff like this, you don't take a blind eye. You talk about it, you discuss it, you bring awareness to it, and then you demand your politicians, your local politicians, to enact laws to stop this behavior. We see this happening year after year after year. And you can shift the conversation and say, well, there's black on black crime, but we're not talking about that right now because they do get dealt with as well. They do get dealt with as well. We talk about trials all the time. So they get dealt with. But we're talking about this right now. So you trolls who just want to provide cover to the rogue cop, you're ridiculous. We saw what we saw. We know what we know. And we have the ability to hear. We have the ability to see. So we're not going to allow this to be swept under the rug. We're going to talk about this. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, in honor of the family, I'm going to end this live, and we're going to be back to discuss an update in the YSL case. Guys, appreciate you. I really do. We're going to end this live right now.